Live. Okay, now we are happening, I think. All right. Believe that should do it. Okay. Hello and hooray. I think we've got it there. Okay, sorry I'm a little bit late. Another mysterious Facebook thing. Let me turn this sound off. I don't need that. Okay. Another mysterious. Actually, I think it was just something that I did, but I'd rather blame it on somebody else. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may happen to be. It is now 4 minutes after 7 o'clock here in not so sunny California. Fairly reasonably sunny today. Anyway, sorry to be starting a little bit late. It was some kind of a weird Facebook stroke meta seizure, but I probably had something to do with it. Anyway, I had to redo everything and start over again. So sorry for the loss of a couple of minutes. I hope you weren't too freaked out. Speaking of freaked out, my discovery for today, my philosophical reflection for today is every time I shave off some of my facial hair, which I just did recently, I find wrinkles that I didn't know I had and scars that I had forgotten that I have, which is always really interesting. I'm like looking at that and going, oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, and that one. Oh, and that one. And yeah, you know. And then, of course, yeah, all the new stuff too, which comes as gravity takes its toll on us all. Anyway, I'm Tad, in case you were for some reason uncertain, although I doubt anybody who is watching these readings after all these years is uncertain about that stuff now. I am going to be here reading for about the next 55 minutes or so. I have no idea how long the thing we're reading tonight is going to be. I don't think it's as long a story as some of the others. No. So we may actually get onto a new story. We'll see what happens time-wise. But anyway, I know we're going to at least get through one story tonight. So one longish story, which is called The Off-Season. Before that, is there anything that I wanted to share with you guys? I did a lot of sharing, probably unnecessary sharing last night, just kind of giving the state of the homestead and my complicated relationship with the holiday season, which is now mostly over, thank goodness, and also some stuff about why the last story that I read, which is called The Martian, had particular resonance for me, which I hope wasn't too boring or off-putting for most of you out there. And so tonight I'm going to be reading another story, which is certainly one of the ones I remember from the my original reading way back when I was a kid of the Martian Chronicles, particularly because it features a character who has already showed up in the stories, a guy named Parkhill, who was one of the sort of boorish crewmen of the third expedition, the one that where the guy Spender went native and decided that the humans were going to ruin Mars and started killing his fellow crewmen and had a very complicated relationship with the captain and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, Parkhill was one of the boorish crewmen in that, and he appears in the next story as well. What else do I want to tell you guys about? Not much, really. Just had a nice day today, did some work, took care of animals, had a visit from one of our young people, who it was a great pleasure to see as always, and who brought me a Superman figure for my belated Christmas gift. And from the other young male member of our family, I got a Hulk of similar size. So I have kind of the Apollonian and Dionysian extremes of my comic book collecting childhood. That would be Superman as the Apollonian and Hulk as the Dionysian, but also sort of Marvel and DC also. DC was always more Apollonian and Marvel was more Dionysian, which is probably why it attracted me the most when I was a kid. I loved the idea of people having superpowers who are otherwise just normal Joes and Josephines like the rest of us, and of course Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. I don't know of any teen who read comics who didn't have at least some kind of identification, or early preteen who read comics who didn't have some kind of connection or feel some kind of connection to Peter Parker back in the early days of Spider-Man comics. Probably the same is still true since he's such a massively popular character. But it wasn't just the swinging around and the having powers and clinging to walls and all that kind of stuff, although obviously that was all very cool. A lot cooler in New York than it would be in California. I was glad they finally addressed that in one of in the first of the new Spider-Man movies, the Tom Holland ones, where Spider-Man actually goes out in his civilian identity to the suburbs and then has to become Spider-Man. And of course, there are no tall buildings to swing from. So he's really in trouble in terms of moving quickly from where he is back to the city, or, to do anything. Because it's the suburbs. They're all ranch-style houses, which I was even kind of aware of when I was a kid. I remember thinking like, wow, Spider-Man would have a tough time around here. What's he going to do? Shoot a web over to the people's house across the street, which is no higher than ours, and what could he do? Anyway, so that all said and eliminated from my mental note of things that I should mention, I will just quickly check and see. Yes, okay, we have managed to get things. And Ron Hyde has checked in. Hello, Ron. Good to see you. Isaac, good to see you. Angie remembers that Sam Parkhill was a douche, and I quote. Tim Speckens, hello. He says, Happy New Year to me and everyone, and hoping you are all doing awesome. And Joanna McCallum has checked in too. So hello, Joanna. Lovely to have you with us. Let me see if there's any others that I need to say hello to. Which is now my page of record. I don't know. Let me see if okay, there we go. So Emily is here. Hello, Emily. Good to see you. Claudia is here. Good to see you. Angie, I mentioned already, but it is all very good to see you. Mr. Unangst, I am so sorry and sad for all the stuff you've been going through, but it is a pleasure to have your company. And I owe you an email, so I am, as usual, completely behind on everything. But I am thinking about you, and so is Deb. And she actually was asking me the other day about what was going on and how you were doing. So I know, not very well, but we're thinking about you. Barban, hello, good to see you. Tracy, Happy New Year. Nigel, hello, hola, señor. Es un placer de verse. And Susan Shamblin chimes in and says hello and cheers to all. And Jeremy, hello, Jeremy. The 7 p.m. is the time, Jeremy points out, at which the famous picture book Goodnight Moon begins. And of course, Goodnight Moon even features in one of my works, namely the War of the Flowers. And it was because at the time I was writing War of the Flowers, our son was a little kid. And without giving away any of the plot of War of the Flowers, I was just very much the worried dad at that point about everything. And I used to scare myself to death in the middle of the night about thinking how if something happened to my child, I would never be able to read Goodnight Moon again without bursting into tears. So that was where it made its appearance in my books. Ron says he remembers the Spider-Man in a black suit. Yes, that was a controversial thing that then turned out to be very popular. And then the suit turned out to be Venom, which I'm an older comics fan, so Venom doesn't mean quite as much to me, even though I've seen every damn Venom movie, because that's what the young male offspring in this household wanted to see, including the most recent Venom movie, which we watched on New Year's Eve. But yes, that suit, that black Spider-Man suit, then later on turned out to be a symbiote named Venom. Complicated. That's the great thing about comic books, though, and also the horrifying thing about comic books, is that because a popular character like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Wolverine, whoever it might be, will oftentimes have several comics being published about them every month. And both of those characters, but especially the Marvel characters for many years, have these shared universes, and they have history, and they have canon, canon. But when you are writing a new 20-page story every month, and oftentimes 2 or 3 or even 4 new 20-page stories every month, that all have to jibe with the previous canon and, the previous continuity. Just anything you can imagine is going to happen. So anybody who is amused by comic books, I urge you sometimes, just go take some average character like out of the X-Men, or some Justice League villain out of DC Comics, and go read the Wikipedia or whatever it is entry on the history of that character. They're hilarious because they just go on and on and on, because there's so many things published in comics. So any given minor character has usually died 7 times. They have usually, become gods, or they've turned into zombies, or they have, traveled to the future and given birth to themselves. And it's just nuts. There are times when I wish I had that amount of freedom to just try things with my own characters. And there are other times when I go, thank God I don't. Anyway, okay, so have I checked Krista? There's Krista. I hadn't said hello to Krista yet. Hello, Krista. And yeah, Marvel has more canon than the Catholic Church, says Angie. So true, so true. Okay, so have I checked in with everybody else? Well, at least all the folks who have put quotations, who have commented on the site. So I am going to go ahead and start reading the off season, especially because I got a late start tonight due to my own screw up, I'm sure. But the thing is just to get my reading on both of my Facebook pages, I have to close up one and open up another, and it's, so all you have to do is do one thing wrong and everything goes to hell in the proverbial handbasket. Anyway, so, hello. So what I'm going to do is start, now that I have finished in confusing myself and undoubtedly confusing some of you as well, that is what I'm going to do. So, let me just place this in a place where it's easy for me to see. All right. And here we go. November 2036. Sam Parkhill motioned with the broom, sweeping away the blue Martian sand. Here we are, he said. Yes, sir. Look at that. He pointed. Look at that sign. Sam's Hot Dogs. Ain't that beautiful, Elma? Sure, Sam, said his wife. Boy, what a change for me. If the boys from the 4th expedition could see me now. Am I glad to be in business myself while all the rest of them guys are off soldiering around still. We'll make thousands, Elma, thousands. His wife looked at him for a long time, not speaking. Whatever happened to Captain Wilder? She asked finally. The captain that killed that guy who thought he was going to kill off every other Earthman. What was his name? Spender, that nut. He was too damn particular. Oh, Captain Wilder. He's off on a rocket to Jupiter, I hear. They kicked him upstairs. I think he was a little batty about Mars, too. Touchy, He'll be back down from Jupiter and Pluto in about 20 years if he's lucky. That's what he gets for shooting off his mouth. And while he's freezing to death, look at me. Look at this place. This was a crossroads where 2 dead highways came and went in darkness. Here, Sam Parkhill had flung up this riveted aluminum structure garish with white light, trembling with jukebox melody. He stooped to fix a border of broken glass he had placed on the footpath. He had broken the glass from some old Martian buildings in the hills. Best hot dogs on two worlds. First man on Mars with a hot dog stand. The best onions and chili and mustard. You can't say I'm not alert. Here's the main highway. Over there is the dead city and the mineral deposits. Those trucks from Earth, Settlement 101, will have to pass here 24 hours a day. Do I know my locations, or don't I? His wife looked at her fingernails. You think those 10,000 new type work rockets will come through to Mars? She said at last. In a month, he said loudly. Why you look so funny? I don't trust those Earth people, she said. I'll believe it when I see them 10,000 rockets arrive with 100,000 Mexicans and Chinese on them. Customers. He lingered on the word. 100,000 hungry people. If, said his wife slowly, watching the sky, if there's no atomic war, I don't trust no atom bombs. There's so many of them on Earth now. You can never tell. Ah, said Sam and went on sweeping. From the corners of his eyes, he caught a blue flicker. Something floated in the air gently behind him. He heard his wife say, Sam, a friend of yours to see you? Sam whirled to see the mask seemingly floating in the wind. So you're back again. And Sam held his broom like a weapon. The mask nodded. It was cut from pale blue glass and was fitted above a thin neck under which were blowing loose robes of thin yellow silk. From the silk, two mesh silver hands appeared. The mask mouth was a slot from which musical sounds issued now, as the robes, the mask, the hands increased to a height, decreased. Mr. Parkhill, I've come to speak to you again, the voice said from behind the mask. I thought I told you. I don't want you near here, cried Sam. Go on, I'll give you the disease. I've already had the disease, said the voice. I was one of the few survivors. I was sick a long time. Go on and hide in the hills. That's where you belong. That's where you've been. Why you come on down and bother me? Now, all of a sudden. Twice, in one day. We mean you no harm. But I mean you harm, said Sam, backing up. I don't like strangers. I don't like Martians. I never seen one before. It ain't natural. All these years you guys hide, and all of a sudden you pick on me. Leave me alone. We come for an important reason, said the blue mask. If it's about this land, it's mine. I built this hot dog stand with my own hands. In a way, it is about the land. Look here, said Sam. I'm from New York City. Where I come from, there's 10 million others just like me. You Martians are a couple dozen left. Got no cities, you wander around in the hills. No leaders, no laws. And now you come tell me about this land. Well, the old got to give way to the new. That's the law of give and take. I got a gun here. After you left this morning, I got it out and loaded it. We Martians are telepathic, said the cold blue mask. We are in contact with one of your towns across the Dead Sea. Have you listened on your radio? My radio's busted. Then you don't know. There's big news. It concerns Earth. A silver hand gestured. A bronze tube appeared in it. Let me show you this. A gun! Cried Sam Parkhill. An instant later, he had yanked his own gun from his hip holster and fired into the mist, the robe, the blue mask. The mask sustained itself a moment. Then, like a small circus tent, pulling up its stakes and dropping, soft fold on fold, the silks rustled, The mask descended. The silver claws tinkled on the stone path. The mask lay on a small huddle of silent white bones and material. Sam stood gasping. His wife swayed over the huddled pile. "That's no weapon," she said, bending down. She picked up the bronze tube. "He was going to show you a message. It's all written out in snake script, all those blue snakes. I can't read it. Can you?" "No, that Martian picture writing, it wasn't anything. Let it go." Sam glanced hastily around. "There may be others. We got to get him out of sight. Get the shovel." "What are you going to do?" "Bury him, of course." "You shouldn't have shot him." "It was a mistake. Quick." Silently, she fetched him the shovel. At 8 o'clock, he was back, sweeping the front of the hot dog stand self-consciously. His wife stood, arms folded, in the bright doorway. I'm sorry what happened," he said. He looked at her, then away. You know it was purely the circumstances of fate." "Yes," said his wife. I hated like hell to see him take out that weapon." "What weapon?" "Well, I thought it was one. I'm sorry. How many times do I say it?" "Shh," said Elma, putting one finger to her lips. "Shh." "I don't care," he said. "I got the whole Earth Settlements, Inc. back of me." He snorted. "These Martians won't dare—" "Look," said Elma. He looked out onto the Dead Sea bottom. He dropped his broom. He looked out onto the Dead Sea bottom. He dropped his broom. He picked it up, and his mouth was open. A little free drop of saliva flew on the air, and he was suddenly shivering. Elma, he said. "Here they come," said Elma. Across the ancient sea floor, a dozen tall, blue-sailed Martian sand ships floated, like blue ghosts, like blue smoke. "Sand ships? But there aren't any anymore, Elma. No more sand ships." "Those seem to be sand ships," she said. "But the authorities confiscated all of them. They broke them up, sold some at auction. I'm the only one in this whole damn territory's got one and knows how to run one." "Not anymore," she said, nodding at the sea. "Come on, let's get out of here." "Why?" she asked slowly, fascinated with the Martian vessels. "They'll kill me. Get in a truck, quick." Elma didn't move. He had to drag her around back of the stand where the two machines stood, his truck, which he had used steadily until a month ago, and the old Martian sand ship, which he had bid for at auction, smiling, and which during the last 3 weeks he had used to carry supplies back and forth over the glassy sea floor. He looked at his truck now and remembered. The engine was out on the ground. He had been puttering with it for 2 days. "The truck don't seem to be in running condition," said Elma. "The sand ship. Get in." "And let you drive me in a sand ship?" "Oh, no. Get in. I can do it." He shoved her in, jumped in behind her, and flapped the tiller, let the cobalt sail up to take the evening wind. The stars were bright, and the blue Martian ships were skimming across the whispering sands. At first his own ship would not move. Then he remembered the sand anchor and yanked it in. "There!" The wind hurled the sand ship, keening over the Dead Sea bottom, over long buried crystals, past upended pillars, past deserted docks of marble and brass, past dead white chest cities, past purple foothills into distance. The figures of the Martian ships receded, and then began to pace Sam's ship. "Guess I showed them, by God!" cried Sam. "I'll report to the Rocket Corporation. They'll give me protection. I'm pretty quick." "They could have stopped you if they wanted," Elma said tiredly. "They just didn't bother." He laughed. "Come off it. Why should they let me get off? No, they weren't quick enough is all. Weren't they? Elma nodded behind him. He did not turn. He felt a cold wind blowing. He was afraid to turn. He felt something in the seat behind him, something as frail as your breath on a cold morning, something as blue as hickory wood smoke at twilight, something like old white lace, something like a snowfall, something like the icy rime of winter on the brittle sedge. There was a sound as of a thin plate of glass broken, laughter, then silence. The young woman sat at the tiller bench quietly. Her wrists were thin as icicles, her eyes as clear as the moon's and as large, steady, and white. The wind blew at her, and, like an image on cold water, she rippled, silk standing out from her frail body in tatters of blue rain. "Go back," she said. "No." Sam was quivering, the fine, delicate fear quivering of a hornet suspended in the air, undecided between fear and hate. "Get off my ship!" "This isn't your ship," said the vision. "It's old as our world. It sailed the sand seas 10,000 years ago, when the seas were whispered away and the docks were empty. And you came and took it, stole it. Now turn it around. Go back to the crossroad place. We have need to talk with you. Something important has happened." "Get off my ship," said Sam. He took a gun from his holster with a creak of leather. He pointed it carefully. "Jump off before I count 3, or—" "Don't," cried the girl. "I won't hurt you. Neither will the others. We came in peace." "1," said Sam. "Sam," said Elma. "Listen to me," said the girl. "2," said Sam firmly, cocking the gun trigger. "Sam," cried Elma. "3," said Sam. "We only," said the girl. The gun went off. In the sunlight, snow melts. Crystals evaporate into a steam, into nothing. In the firelight, vapors dance and vanish. In the core of a volcano, fragile things burst and disappear. The girl, in the gunfire, in the heat, in the concussion, folded like a soft scarf, melted like a crystal figurine. What was left of her, ice, snowflake, smoke, blew away in the wind. The tiller seat was empty. Sam holstered his gun and did not look at his wife. "Sam," she said after a minute more of traveling, whispering over the moon-colored sea of sand, "stop the ship." He looked at her and his face was pale. "No, you don't. Not after all this time. You're not pulling out on me." She looked at his hand on his gun. "I believe you would," she said. "You actually would." He jerked his head from side to side, hand tight on the tiller bar. "Elma, this is crazy. We'll be in town in a minute. We'll be okay." "Yes," said his wife, lying back cold in the ship. "Elma, listen to me." "There's nothing to hear, Sam." "Elma!" They were passing a little white chest city, and in his frustration, in his rage, he sent 6 bullets crashing among the crystal towers. The city dissolved in a shower of ancient glass and splintered quartz. It fell away like carved soap, shattered. It was no more. He laughed and fired again, and one last tower, one last chess piece, took fire, ignited, and in blue flinders went up to the stars. "I'll show them. I'll show everybody." "Go ahead, show us, Sam." She lay in the shadows. "Here comes another city." Sam reloaded his gun. "Watch me fix it." The blue phantom ships loomed up behind them, drawing steadily apace. He did not see them at first. He was only aware of a whistling and a high, windy screaming as of steel on sand, and it was the sound of the sharp razor prows of the sand ships preening the sea bottoms, their red pennants, blue pennants unfurled. In the blue light, ships were blue dark images. Masked men, men with silvery faces, men with blue stars for eyes, men with carved golden ears, men with tinfoil cheeks and ruby-studded lips, men with arms folded, men following him, Martian men. 1, 2, 3, Sam counted. The Martian ships closed in. Elma! Elma! I can't hold them all off. Elma did not speak or rise from where she had slumped. Sam fired his gun 8 times. One of the sand ships fell apart. The sail, the emerald body, the bronze hull points, the moon-white tiller, and all the separate images in it. The masked men, all of them, dug into the sand and separated out into orange and then smoke flame. But the other ships closed in. I'm outnumbered, Elma, he cried. They'll kill me. He threw out the anchor. It was no use. The sail fluttered down, folding unto itself, sighing. The ship stopped. The wind stopped. Travel stopped. Mars stood still as the majestic vessels of the Martians drew around and hesitated over him. Earthman, a voice called from a high seat somewhere. A silverine mask moved. Ruby red-rimmed lips glittered with the words. I didn't do anything. Sam looked at all the faces, 100 in all, that surrounded him. There weren't many Martians left on Mars. 100, 150, all told. And most of them were here now, on the dead seas, in their resurrected ships, by their dead chest cities, one of which had just fallen, like some fragile vase hit by a pebble. The silverine masks glinted. It was all a mistake, he pleaded, standing out of his ship, his wife slumped behind him in the deeps of the hold, like a dead woman. I came to Mars like any honest, enterprising businessman. I took some surplus material from a rocket that crashed, and I built me the finest little stand you ever saw, right there on that land by the crossroads. You know where it is. You got to admit, it's a good job of building. Sam laughed, staring around. And that Martian, I know he was a friend of yours, came. His death was an accident, I assure you. All I wanted to do was have a hot dog stand. The only one on Mars, the first and most important one. You understand how it is? I was going to serve the best darn hot dogs there with chili and onions and orange juice. The silver masks did not move. They burned in the moonlight. Yellow eyes shone upon Sam. He felt his stomach clench in, wither, become a rock. He threw his gun in the sand. I give up. Pick up your gun, said the Martians in chorus. What? Your gun. A jeweled hand waved from the prow of a blue ship. Pick it up. Put it away. Unbelieving, he picked up the gun. Now, said the voice, turn your ship and go back to your stand. Now? Now, said the voice. We will not harm you. You ran away before we were able to explain. Come. Now the great ships turned as lightly as moon thistles. Their wing sails flapped with the soft sound of applause on the air. The masks were coruscating, turning, firing the shadows. Elma! Sam tumbled into the ship. Get up, Elma! We're going back! He was excited. He almost gibbered with relief. They aren't going to hurt me, kill me. Elma, get up, honey. Get up. What? What? Elma blinked around, and slowly, as the ship was sent into the wind again, she helped herself, as in a dream, back up to a seat, and slumped there like a sack of stones, saying no more. The sand slid under the ship. In half an hour, they were back at the crossroads, the ships planted, all of them out of the ships. The leader stood before Sam and Elma, his mask beaten of polished bronze, the eyes only empty slits of endless blue-black, the mouth a slot out of which words drifted into the wind. "Ready your stand," said the voice. A diamond-gloved hand waved. "Prepare the viands. Prepare the foods. Prepare the strange wines, for tonight is indeed a great night." "You mean," said Sam, "you'll let me stay on here?" "Yes. You're not mad at me?" The mask was rigid and carved and cold and sightless. "Prepare your place of food," said the voice softly, "and take this." "What is it?" Sam blinked at the silver foil scroll that was handed him, upon which, in hieroglyph, snake figures danced. "It is the land grant to all of the territory, from the Silver Mountains to the Blue Hills, from the dead salt sea there to the distant valleys of Moonstone and Emerald," said the leader. "Mine?" said Sam, incredulous. "Yours. 100,000 miles of territory? Yours. Did you hear that, Elma?" Elma was sitting on the ground, leaning against the aluminum hot dog stand, eyes shut. "But why? Why are you giving me all this?" asked Sam, trying to look into the metal slots of the eyes. "That is not all. Here." 6 other scrolls were produced. The names were declared, the territories announced. "Why, that's half of Mars. I own half of Mars." Sam rattled the scrolls in his fists. He shook them at Elma, insane with laughing. "Elma, did you hear?" "I heard," said Elma, looking at the sky. She seemed to be watching for something. She was becoming a little more alert now. "Thank you. Oh, thank you," said Sam to the bronze mask. "Tonight is the night," said the mask. "You must be ready." I will be." "What is it, a surprise? Are the rockets coming through earlier than we thought, a month earlier from Earth? All 10,000 rockets bringing the settlers, the miners, the workers, and their wives? All 100,000s of them? Won't that be swell, Elma? You see, I told you that town there won't always have just 1,000 people in it. There'll be 50,000 more coming. And the month after that, 100,000 more. And by the end of the year, 5 million Earthmen. And me, with the only hot dog stand staked out on the busiest highway to the mines." The mask floated on the wind. "We leave you. Prepare. The land is yours." In the blowing moonlight, like metal petals of some ancient flower, like blue plumes, like cobalt butterflies, immense and quiet, the old ships turned and moved over the shifting sands, the masks beaming and glittering, until the last shine, the last blue color, was lost among the hills. "Elma, why did they do it? Why didn't they kill me? Don't they know anything? What's wrong with them? Elma, do you understand?" He shook her shoulder. "I own half of Mars." She watched the night sky, waiting. "Come on," he said. "We got to get the place fixed. All the hot dogs boiling, the buns warm, the chili cooking, onions peeled and diced, relish laid out, napkins in the clips, the place spotless. Hey!" He did a little wild dance, kicking his heels. "Oh, boy, I'm happy. Yes, sir, I'm happy," he sang off-key. "This is my lucky day." He boiled the hot dogs, cut the buns, sliced the onions in a frenzy. Just think. That Martian said a surprise. That can only mean one thing, Elma. Those 100,000 people coming in ahead of schedule tonight, of all nights, will be flooded. We'll work long hours for days, what with tourists riding around, seeing things. Elma, think of the money. He went out and looked at the sky. He didn't see anything. In a minute, maybe, he said, snuffing the cool air gratefully, arms up, beating his chest. Ah! Elma said nothing. She peeled potatoes for French fries quietly, her eyes always on the sky. Sam, she said half an hour later, there it is. Look. He looked and saw it. Earth. It rose full and green like a fine cut stone up above the hills. Good old Earth, he whispered lovingly. Good old wonderful Earth. Send me your hungry and your starved. Something. How does that poem go? Send me your hungry old Earth. Here's Sam Parkhill. His hot dogs all boiled, his chili cooking, everything neat as a pin. Come on, you Earth, send me your rockets. He went out to look at his place. There it sat, perfect as a fresh-laid egg on the Dead Sea bottom, the only nucleus of light and warmth in hundreds of miles of lonely wasteland. It was like a heart beating alone in a great dark body. He felt almost sorrowful with pride, gazing at it with wet eyes. It sure makes you humble, he said among the cooking odors of wieners, warm buns, rich butter. Step up, he invited the various stars in the sky. Who'll be the first to buy? Sam, said Elma. Earth changed in the black sky. It caught fire. Part of it seemed to come apart in a million pieces, as if a gigantic jigsaw had exploded. It burned with an unholy, dripping glare for a minute, 3 times normal size, then dwindled. What was that? Sam looked at the green fire in the sky. Earth, said Helma, holding her hands together. That can't be Earth. That's not Earth. No, that ain't Earth. It can't be. You mean it couldn't be Earth, said Elma, looking at him. That just isn't Earth. No, that's not Earth. Is that what you mean? Not Earth. No, it couldn't be, he wailed. He stood there, his hands at his sides, his mouth open, his eyes wide and dull, not moving. Sam? She called his name. For the first time in days, her eyes were bright. Sam? He looked up at the sky. Well, she said. She glanced around for a minute or so in silence. Then briskly, she flapped a wet towel over her arm. Switch on more lights. Turn up the music. Open the doors. There'll be another batch of customers along in about 1 million years. Gotta be ready. Yes, sir. Sam did not move. What a swell spot for a hot dog stand, she said. She reached over and picked a toothpick out of the jar and put it between her front teeth. Let you in on a little secret, Sam, she whispered, leaning toward him. This looks like it's going to be an off-season. And that is the end of that story. All right, I am going to continue reading some other bits here and then into the next story, just to keep going because we got about 15 minutes left to go. So the next one is, the next entry is November 2036, The Watchers. They all came out and looked at the sky that night. They left their suppers or their washing up or their dressing for the show, and they came out upon their new, now not quite as new porches and watched the green star of Earth there. It was a move without conscious effort. They all did it to help them understand the news they had heard on the radio a moment before. There was Earth, and there the coming war, and there hundreds of thousands of mothers, or grandmothers, or fathers, or brothers, or aunts, or uncles, or cousins. They stood on the porches and tried to believe in the existence of Earth, much as they had once tried to believe in the existence of Mars. It was a problem reversed. To all intents and purposes, Earth now was dead. They had been away from it for 3 or 4 years. Space was an anesthetic. 70 million miles of space numbed you, put memory to sleep, depopulated Earth, erased the past, and allowed these people here to go on with their work. But now, tonight, the dead were risen. Earth was re-inhabited. Memory awoke. 1 million names were spoken. What was so-and-so doing tonight on Earth? What about this one and that one? The people on the porches glanced sideways at each other's faces. At 9 o'clock, Earth seemed to explode, catch fire, and burn. The people on the porches put up their hands as if to beat the fire out. They waited. By midnight, the fire was extinguished. Earth was still there. There was a sigh, like an autumn wind from the porches. "We haven't heard from Harry for a long time." "He's all right." "We should send a message to Mother." "She's all right." "Is she?" "Now, don't worry." "Will she be all right, do you think?" Of course. Now, come to bed." But nobody moved. Late dinners were carried out onto the night lawns and set upon collapsible tables, and they picked at these slowly until 2 o'clock, and the light radio message flashed from Earth. They could read the great Morse code flashes, which flickered like a distant firefly. Australian continent atomized in premature explosion of atomic stockpile. Los Angeles, London, bombed. War. Come home. Come home. Come home. They stood up from their tables. Come home. Come home. Come home. Have you heard from your brother Ted this year? You know, with mail rates, $5 a letter to Earth, I don't write much. Come home. I've been wondering about Jane. You remember Jane, my kid sister? Come home. At 3 in the chilly morning, the luggage store proprietor glanced up. A lot of people were coming down the street. "Stayed open late on purpose. What'll it be, mister?" By dawn, the luggage was gone from his shelves. December 2036, the silent towns. There was a little white silent town on the edge of the dead Martian sea. The town was empty. No one moved in it. Lonely lights burned in the stores all day. The shop doors were wide, as if people had run off without using their keys. Magazines brought from Earth on the silver rocket a month before fluttered, untouched, burning brown on wire racks fronting the silent drugstores. The town was dead. Its beds were empty and cold. The only sound was the power hum of electric lines and dynamos, still alive all by themselves. Water ran in forgotten bathtubs, poured out into living rooms, onto porches, and down through little garden plots to feed neglected flowers. In the dark theaters, gum under the many seats began to harden with tooth impressions still in it. Across town was a rocket port. You could still smell the hard, scorched smell where the last rocket blasted off when it went back to Earth. If you dropped a dime in the telescope and pointed it at Earth, perhaps you could see the big war happening there. Perhaps you could see New York explode. Maybe London could be seen, covered with a new kind of fog. Perhaps then it might be understood why this small Martian town is abandoned. How quick was the evacuation? Walk in any store, bang the no-sale key. Cash drawers jump out, all bright and jingly with coins. That war on Earth must be very bad. Along the empty avenues of this town, now, whistling softly, kicking a tin can ahead of him in deepest concentration, came a tall, thin man. His eyes glowed with a dark, quiet look of loneliness. He moved his bony hands in his pockets, which were tinkling with new dimes. Occasionally he tossed a dime to the ground. He laughed, temperately, doing this, and walked on, sprinkling bright dimes everywhere. His name was Walter Grip. He had a placer mine and a remote shack far up in the blue Martian hills, and he walked to town once every 2 weeks to see if he could marry a quiet and intelligent woman. Over the years, he had always returned to his shack alone and disappointed. A week ago, arriving in town, he had found it this way. That day, he had been so surprised that he had rushed to a delicatessen, flung wide a case, and ordered a triple-decker beef sandwich. "Coming up," he cried, a towel on his arm. He flourished meats and bread baked the day before, dusted a table, invited himself to sit, and ate until he had to go find a soda fountain, where he ordered a bicarbonate. The druggist, being one Walter Grip, was astoundingly polite and fizzed one right up for him. He stuffed his jeans with money, all he could find. He loaded a boy's wagon with $10 bills and ran lickety-split through the town. Reaching the suburbs, he suddenly realized how shamefully silly he was. He didn't need money. He rode the $10 bills back to where he'd found them, counted $1 from his own wallet to pay for the sandwiches, dropped it in the delicatessen till, and added a quarter tip. That night, he enjoyed a hot Turkish bath, a succulent fillet carpeted with delicate mushrooms, imported dry sherry, and strawberries in wine. He fitted himself for a new blue flannel suit and a rich gray Homburg, which balanced oddly atop his gaunt head. He slid money into a jukebox, which played That Old Gang of Mine. He dropped nickels in 20 boxes all over town. The lonely streets and the night were full of the sad music of That Old Gang of Mine as he walked, tall and thin and alone, his new shoes clumping softly, his cold hands in his pockets. But that was a week past. He slept in a good house on Mars Avenue, rose mornings at 9, bathed, and idled to town for ham and eggs. No morning passed that he didn't freeze a ton of meats, vegetables, and lemon cream pies, enough to last 10 years until the rockets came back from Earth, if they ever came. Now, tonight, he drifted up and down, seeing the wax women in every colorful shop window, pink and beautiful. For the first time, he knew how dead the town was. He drew a glass of beer and sobbed gently. "Why," he said, "I'm all alone." He entered the elite theater to show himself a film to distract his mind from his isolation. The theater was hollow, empty, like a tomb with phantoms crawling gray and black on the vast screen. Shivering, he hurried from the haunted place. Having decided to return home, he was striking down the middle of a side street, almost running, when he heard the phone. He listened. Phone ringing in someone's house. He proceeded briskly. "Someone should answer that phone," he mused. He sat on a curb to pick a rock from his shoe idly. "Someone!" he screamed, leaping. "Me! Good Lord, what's wrong with me?" He shrieked. He whirled. "Which house?" "That one!" He raced over the lawn, up the steps, into the house, down a dark hall. He yanked up the receiver. "Hello!" he cried. "Bzzz! Hello! Hello!" They had hung up. "Hello!" he shouted, and banged the phone. "You stupid idiot!" he cried to himself. "Sitting on that curb! You fool! Oh, you damned and awful fool!" He squeezed the phone. "Come on! Ring again! Come on!" He had never thought there might be others left on Mars. In the entire week, he had seen no one. He had figured that all other towns were as empty as this one. Now, Staring at this terrible little black phone, he trembled. Interlocking dial systems connected every town on Mars. From which of 30 cities had the call come? And I am going to stop there because there's quite a bit of this story left, and I don't want to give too much of it away. So we will leave it there, and I will continue next week, which is in fact what I am going to do, is continue next week, because there's no reason I shouldn't, and I certainly am going to continue reading whenever possible till we get Martian Chronicles finished and I figure out what's happening next. So with that, I am going to wrap it up a minute or so earlier than usual. And I thank you, as always, for spending some of your precious time with me, which I always appreciate, and hoping that you will join me again next week, that if you watch some of these on YouTube, that you will do a favor and like and subscribe to Chris's channel, because he's doing this for nothing except pure love of the game, and he deserves a little support. And I will see you very soon. And until that point, I ask you to take good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and close friends and family, and keep an eye open for anybody else who might need a kind word or a helping hand, because you never can tell. And I will see you next Sunday morning at 1 a.m. California time, and then again at 7 p.m. California time. And with that, I am signing off for the night, and again thanking you and saying be well, and I'll see you real soon. Ciao. Oh, and peace.